This is the video report for the second programming project, which utilized Java script to create an online map. Our map, created by Stephen Bolster and Karsten Busby, was centered around the Doctrine and Covenants and LDS history. So we create an LDS history map, and this map utilizes JavaScript in the mapping as well as HTML and CSS. Our map, as you can see here, has different tabs. The Home tab, where we are currently. The About tab, which will have information about the site, as in the technical background of it and the user help file. Also, there's a Contact tab. If you so desire to contact us, that is how you can do it. But really the magic that we have here is on the home page. So if we come to the home page, before we switch into full screen, we just want to show that our pop-ups are a little bit smaller when you're not in full screen, but there they are. But now let's move to full screen for optimal viewing. And here on full screen, the first thing you notice is the map, but also on the right side here we have our sidebar, and this has the controls and some information about the site. So our site is divided into three main areas. That would be the early church era, the Nauvoo era, and the final trek west. And if you go through these radio controls here, it'll focus in on each of those. So here's the first, the second, and the final one. Now also, as you see here, there's these two check boxes. One will control showing the borders between the United States and Mexico in 1847, and that is when the Saints finally crossed that border as they settled in the Salt Lake Basin. And the other toggles to show the completed temples along this route. The first being in Kirtland, the second in Nauvoo, and lastly in Salt Lake. If we come in here and look a little bit more at the sites, for example, Nauvoo, we get a little pop-up with a little picture that shows you what Nauvoo looked like. These pictures are sometimes contemporary paintings, or they just depicting on what's really going on at these times. Also, when we go to these pop-ups, they will give a scripture, not only a scripture, but a link to that scripture. So if you were to click on it, you end up here on the official scriptures from the church online, and the scriptures are highlighted to know exactly what we're talking about. Back at the full screen though, we have all these different lines, and they represent that trip that the Saints took, starting in Fayette, New York, and ending in Kirtland, Ohio. And this went over the time period from 1830 to 1847. We invite you to come in and look at our site, to experience it, and to learn a bit about the church history and the wonderful legacy that these pioneers and saints left for us.
This is the HTML for our website. We start by putting some metadata, keywords, description, etc. And then we load the icon for the shortcut and load a couple of style sheets. This one is a built-in open layers one, and this one is a custom style sheet we created that I'll show you in a second. This part right here changes the style of the map to get rid of the Bing logo. That was just really big on the map and blocked a lot of our features, so we still give credit to Bing in our website, so that should be okay. We loaded a couple of JavaScripts here as well, open layers one, and then one that we created ourselves that I will show you later. And then here is the body of our HTML. It loads the init function and passes in a variable small. If you're running full screen, it'll pass a different name in there. And then we have a lot of divs for the different parts of our website so that we could style each of those separately. We have main navigation here. We have a header. This is our sidebar with our radio buttons and our checkboxes. You can notice that they run the load function when those are clicked, or the toggle function for the checkboxes. We'll go to those. And then we have a section that describes the currently selected era. Down here we have the div containing our map and the full screen link, and then finally we have the footer at the bottom that has alternative navigation and copyright information, as well as some links to supporting websites. So I'll go to our CSS file really quick, and since this wasn't part of the project, I'll just kind of go over this really fast. We just have different tags, and for each tag, if the div ID is, for example, page container, then we have a lot of style information that will affect that div. And this should work in all major browsers, including Internet Explorer, Chrome, and Firefox, because of the style sheet that we created. And that's our HTML.
This is our JavaScript for our website, and we start by declaring some global variables. After that, we have several functions. The first function is called init, and it receives a variable called size. Like I showed you in the HTML, that size variable is either small or large, and it changes the pop-up size. So what that does is, if you're on the small map within our website, then the pop-ups are smaller so they can fit within the window. And if you're in the full screen map, then they are larger so that you can see all the information at once without having to scroll within each pop-up. This line of code allows for some custom changes we made to the OpenLayers styling. And then we declare our map variable. We import our API key that we received from bingmapsportal.com, and we create 2 layers for our Bing base maps. After that, we create our vector layers, and these are all from the KMLs that we generated using ArcMap 10.1. That includes a layer for temples, and then for the different eras of the movement west, and then finally one for the country boundaries in 1847. After we create those layers, we remove them from the layer switcher. The only thing we want on the layer switcher is the different kinds of base maps, because everything else will be controlled by the sidebar that we created in our website. Then we add all of the layers to our map, and then we add the layer switcher and the scale line. After that, we set a custom center point and zoom. We didn't like any of the zooms that were available, such as the extents of our data, because it didn't quite show everything we wanted to show, so we created a custom zoom and set that as a zoom for the map. Then we set events on for the layers that we want to select, and then we put, we call the feature select and on feature unselect functions when those are selected and unselected, and we'll go to those functions in a second. Finally, we add the select control to our map and activate it. So that's what's run when the website is open. Then we have the function on feature select. So when a feature is selected, we set the content of that pop-up to the following, and that's just some HTML code. It uses the tags within our KML that we'll go over to set the data within each pop-up, as well as images. And then we actually create the pop-up using that content. We used an anchored bubble. We kind of liked the way it looked a little better than the default. So we also did this line of code to keep the pop-up within the map so that the map wouldn't move around when you clicked on features. And then we add the pop-up to the map. Then there's the onFeature unselect function that's run when a feature is unselected. And all it simply does is it removes, deletes, and destroys the pop-up. Finally, there's this onPopUp close event. When the pop-up's closed using the small red X, then it simply unselects all of the features, and that will run the feature unselect and destroy all the pop-ups that are open. Down here we have the load function. This function is run when somebody clicks on one of the radio buttons and selects an era of the Church Movement West. And so depending on this era, we have this switch. So for the different cases, we set visibility for the different layers so that only the applicable layers are showing. And then we have different zooms. For all of the eras, when you have them all showing, then we have that same custom zoom we showed earlier. And then for each era, we have just the extents of the era as the zoom. And then we also have this section here that changes the content of the sidebar on our website to talk about that era specifically. So that's not within the map itself, it's actually on the side in our website. And then here at the bottom is the toggle function. This function is called when you click the checkbox to turn on and off the layers that are representing the U.S.-Mexico borders and the completed early church temples. So it's a simple check to see if the checkbox is checked or unchecked, and then if it's checked, it will set the visibility to true. If it's unchecked, it will set the visibility to false and turn that layer off. So that's our JavaScript.
Now we'd like to explain a little bit about our KML file. These are the files that we use to populate our website, and to create them we went into ArcMap and made different layers that included different maps that included our different eras, and from each of those maps we exported them into the KML, and this is what we came out with. We edited them by adding some special tags. You can see the names. We have a name tag for Fayette, also the title, the dates, the description. This kind of goes all the way out there. Scriptural reference and a link that you can click on to go to it, and then that's where it connects to our pictures that are also populated in the pop-ups. So that is created for all the different lines and points within our map, and that's what you saw at the beginning of our video. It all comes from here. And here at the very bottom is just some styling information. We didn't like the generic information that came from ArcMap, so we changed a little bit, made our points different, a little bigger, as well as our lines. We increased the width so it's a little easier to select them, and that is how you use our map. This is where it came from. We're grateful for your spending your time listening to our video and also coming to better understand church history through our website.